last 2 days, it felt like a month.
Sometimes words are not enough. You gotta just make noises.
You just gotta die inside a little bit.
No, you don't want to do that.
I do every day. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, how you doing? How's life?
Life is life. How about yours? I thought you were gonna just stay silent there for the whole time and just be like, no, that's it. That's like it.
5 straight minutes.
That's all I got. Yeah. But we're here. I think this is the end of the horror stint again. We've come to closing out another.
Who'd have thought it had gone by that fast?
Yeah, that was quick. It goes too quick anymore. Just speaking of life, just goes too quick.
Yeah. Why do you think I offer the full September-October experience? Because it's just not enough.
That is true. Yes, might as well offer 8 weeks. Why offer 4 when you can offer 8?
Well, it's actually, I think it works out to 9 if I'm not mistaken. At least it has the last 2 years.
Okay.
I think maybe it differs.
You don't have to correct me.
No, I did. I'm joking.
But what do we got? What do we got on the dock? Literally. Well,
I figured, since we had been on the anniversary kick with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when I was down at HHN this year, not to beat a dead horse with HHN, but it was brought to my attention that Creature from the Black Lagoon is in its 70th anniversary this year.
Yes. Oh my God, 70th anniversary. How about that?
It's a steep one. So I was like, I gots to do it.
So this is an oldie.
It's an oldie where we come from.
No, I was thinking about this. This might be the oldest movie we've talked about yet. I don't know.
To my knowledge, you know what? I think you're right.
This might be the oldest one that we've certainly mentioned other things that are older, but I think this is. I
guess a lot of some of the older stuff we've done in like retrospectives and broader span.
Yeah, but I think this one is what we've given a dedicated episode to. This might be. One of the oldest ones. It's definitely one of the oldest ones we've talked about, 1954, which, strangely enough, we just said the quote, it's an oldie. That's an oldie where we come from. Mm-hmm. This is only 1 year away.
Year before.
This would have been brand new when Marty McFly went back to 1955.
That is kind of wild to think about. I guess I've never really thought of it from that angle.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's cool.
Well, you've seen those memes or whatever the kids call them these days, where like
whatever the kids are calling them these days.
I don't know how like if
Could
Marty
you make
went
yourself
back in time,
sound any older?
No, yeah, like if Marty went back in time now, it would be equivalent to like our childhood.
Isn't it like 1994?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
Wild. That would have been, yeah.
Yeah, 30 years.
Myself with that one.
So it's like, but like, I don't know. Anyway, yes. So we are talking about Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Definitely one of my favorites of the Universal classics. I figured now that we've done the broad strokes with last year's Halloween retrospective, or horror classics retrospective. I figured, we can kind of dip a toe back in and cherry pick a good one every year. Because honestly, they're all deserving. But
yeah, and I always forget too. This is a black and white movie, which even though it came out in 54, it wasn't. There was definitely color being used at the time. There was a long
overlap period, like well into the 70s, where color was still kind of a novelty, and it was like cheap to shoot black and white because black and white film stock went down in price. So it was like, oh well, if you're on any kind of a budget, that's the way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Which the irony, of course, now is if you wanted to shoot in black and white on film, it would be more expensive now.
Yeah,
but obviously
the
you
tangled
can do
webs.
It, yeah, you can do it digitally, but that's always, I think that is a lost thing, because. Well, we'll get to that part about shooting in black and white, as opposed to color. Yeah, so Creature from the Black Lagoon.
To dip a toe, like the cinematography of Creature is very interesting because they did the underwater thing, the underwater housings for film cameras. That's very complicated because just trying to load film stock and like change it out, like you only get that 11 minutes of film, and then you got to surface, unhouse the camera, transfer the footage, in a tent, in a non-light exposed tent. That's a very complicated process.
That sounds like so much work. You
like
mean I can't
just diving and raising and loading and rehousing?
I can't just go down with my waterproof iPhone and take a shot.
And then on top of that, you're dealing with the creature as a bodysuit, underwater, filming with that. That's a whole other layer on top of that.
Yeah. So for anyone who's not seen, just to give it the intro here, 1954 Universal, which I was kind of like when I rewatched it again for the first time.
That's right. You did
while,
rewatch it this week.
Yeah, I almost forgot. Like Universal International, I think is like the opening title card.
Mm-hmm.
Like
it predates that Universal logo.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait, what? Because I was like, wait a minute, I don't think this is as old as like Dracula or Frankenstein, which it's not. Because like the more classic characters like the Mummy, Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, those all came out 30s and 40s.
Yeah, this one kind of gets the notoriety for being one of the more recent ones and one of the more technologically superior because it was they used the underwater and everything.
Yeah, so I had to like stop and like look a little bit on that, but this is definitely one that I think still has its B movie charm, that classic horror.
The score, like that dun-na-na, like.
You got that like orchestral sort of like it's weird like that, like the sound the sounds are more, especially in older movies, it's not as
they're very
crisp.
bold.
Yeah, very bold. Yes, no, that's a way to put it. Like subtlety isn't necessarily.
It's like thing. with especially with the Universal classics. It's like how hard can we slam that nail on the head? And I kind of love that about them.
Yeah, I mean, hey, but this, I mean, we've been talking about it. The unintended theme that we've had for this Halloween.
I was kind of thinking about that when I rewatched it.
Yeah, like the thing. So real quick, the story is very simple. It's a simple setup. You've got you've got a crew of scientists who want to obtain this fossil, the rest of this fossil of this strange looking creature. It starts out with a guy down in the Amazon somewhere. I guess it's Brazil.
Yeah.
But
they find the fossil.
Yeah, they find a fossil of like a humanoid fish hand, I guess essentially with claws, and they want to get the rest of the fossil. Something just
undescribed that piques curiosity. They can't identify it.
Yeah, and they it's essentially has that like treasure hunt feel going on with it, and in order to get it, there's it's not as easy as they think, and of course they end up disturbing the natural habitat of the creature. Yeah. This humanoid fish man that is quote unquote terrorizing their expedition.
Speaking of Fishman, the immense amount of nicknames they give him through the course of this movie, I think is unparalleled. I can't think of another movie where they like nickname the titular character more times.
Yes. That is true, yeah.
The Gill Man, some sort of fish man.
Oh, the Gill Man, yeah. The Gill Man is usually the more common one.
A humanoid fish creature that lives below the surface. And also, like, by extension, like, the dialogue. This, I think we had mentioned in a previous episode, just how incredible that old cinema dialogue can be. And this is, in my opinion, one of the greatest examples.
No, this is definitely, yes. If you were to put this up like, splice a scene from dialogue in this with dialogue, what came out recently horror-wise, like, I'll just...
Because I just want to see like creature groaning and then cage.
Just like if you splice this with Last of Us, I'll just say
yes,
because it's the first thing that's coming to my mind. The dialogue is, you're gonna notice a big difference in dialogue, also tone too.
Yeah,
like how it's shot, how the actors work. There's more of a stagecraft.
It was like that, like marvel of cinema kind of aura, where it's like those like cinematic moments of dialogue. Like the one I always come back to is whenever the main character returns to the surface and she asks him what it was like, and he's like, it was like another world. And he like it's like he holds her close, looks off into the distance. It's like such an old cinema moment.
Yeah, it's that bright-eyed and bushy-tailed kind of like looking off in the distance. And someone says, okay, look off into the distance.
Yeah,
look at your future. There it is. Look at that.
And they had a lot of great like rear projection moments, like those very Kubrick looking, like the speedboat when they're still back, you know, on the mainland. Like,
no, absolutely, yeah. That even when they're on the Rita, the boat taking them down the river.
Yeah.
No, this is definitely. I mean, it's a simple monster movie. Again, the plot is not complex, and it's certainly not a very long movie in terms of runtime. I think it's under 90 minutes. I want to say it's only.
I think
like
it's
85.
like an hour and 11, something like that.
Yeah, an hour and 20 maybe.
Also, like with
range.
older movies, you have like they didn't include a lot of people in the credits. Like they didn't have all the grip crews and all that. Like those people didn't get credited. Like it just wasn't the norm.
It just didn't happen. No, yeah, and you forget that. Like you always forget how some things, even art, nothing comes like ready made. You know, the things you can take for granted sometimes, which kind of hits the theme of Creature from the Black Lagoon. You know, this is a creature that's, I think they said existed obviously millions of years ago, the fossil that they're trying to get at, but they run into a living specimen. And of course, spoilers, their only instinct is I shouldn't say their only instinct, but essentially
their main driving force.
Is to pillage it. We'll put it this way, it does not end well for the creature.
I have to say it's one of the, I think one of my most favored things about it is the tragedy of how it ends.
Yeah.
Because from that Shape of Water sense, because Shape of Water is essentially like a continuation of this, the creature storyline. And you have to just like feel for the fact that it's just like a creature, like it's just an animal, a living thing that these people just like invaded its territory and like fucked with it and then like destroyed its house and like killed it. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is definitely interesting to see, especially in 1954 with, you have, I want to say, had The Blob come out yet? I want to say The Blob had been out already. No, I'm sorry. The Blob was 1958.
Really?
Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so
it was
4 years later. But I'll use that as an example. So even like later on, there's always that sense of like, well, we can make it easier and the monster is just the monster and it's mindless and it's evil and it's just there to represent what we want it to. It's just there to be the monster.
And I love in this one, it's just kind of territorial.
Yeah, they try to, as much as they can, as because at the end of the day, it's still a movie and they got to make money. Even back then, they still try to emulate it as it's an animal.
Yeah.
Or some other type of sentient species that is curious about what the heck's going on. And then, of course, a normal reaction that someone might have is, oh my God, kill it. Or, the same way you see like a bug in your house.
Yeah.
Squash it, smash it. And of course, well, like anything, it's going to try and defend itself.
Well, the mission leader is also constantly of the paranoia of no one's going to believe us. And that's like the main driving force behind, well, if we don't bring it back and capture it, it's no one's going to believe us.
Of course. Who would believe you?
There's a bit of irony in that they have the fossil.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is true. Yeah.
And I've always been like, well, you do have some evidence.
You do have some evidence. That is true. Yeah. That is kind of a continuity error or something.
Yeah, there's a bit of
kind of gets lost because they don't in any way ever
really acknowledge that they have acknowledge
like they do have this and they have the expedition and other and they could also like, I guess technically it kind of fades out at the end. The ending is just the creature just floating in the water and then it cuts to the end.
Well, I think a lot of like these types of science-based horror often have to be like a mishandling of things, like Hollow Man, for example. Like Kevin Bacon like lies to the committee, and that's the whole reason it goes all haywire because like they're operating totally off the grid.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's always like in science horror, there's always like an element of like misbehaving.
That unchecked arrogance or like not following the proper procedure and rules. Like even though as a scientist you are expected to do that, there's like that lure of adventure or that lure of discovery, calls to you and you're just like, let's cut the corner here a little bit. And of course cutting the corner results
in chaos.
Yeah. And that's how we get our story.
Because it ain't good without chaos. We'll put it that way.
But yeah, no, what I was saying before though is it definitely has that, you take some things for granted. Like it wasn't like when you're talking about the credits, it wasn't nothing was ever ready made. Like it's not like how we see a credit today and like, oh, there's like thousands of names on there and all these things and like rules and regulations that are put in. None of that was was baked into at least the film industry when it first started, like how to shoot. And we've talked a little bit about this, how to light, how to write the script. All this came, in the process. And, it's like art, it's a living thing unto itself, especially too to shoot the way they did underwater. Like we talked a little bit about that. One thing I do want to real quick in the opening kind of sequence, I was kind of not literally because that doesn't make sense, but there's like he's giving like the narrator's kind of saying like what the world was like millions of years ago, but they do almost like an explosion sequence in it. And I was quite impressed with that because again, this is 1954, and I'm sitting there, I'm trying to think, how did they shoot that? Is that like a set? Is that like a model? And they just got had the special camera to go in on it. But I gotta say, for a 1954 classic, Universal monster, this one definitely holds up. I feel it has that charm. I know it's in black and white, but again, it's not a super long movie. It's shorter than almost any Marvel movie.
That's kind of what I love about the horror classics is they're generally pretty short and effectively short. Like not like over, like they're not cut down too much.
Yeah.
But they're also like they're just kind of perfect in like their own little time slot. And I love that.
Yeah. So that they knew what they had and they were like, okay, we gotta get in and out here.
Yeah.
We gotta find the perfect balance.
Well, also like Creature himself is like just such an iconic, like each one of these horror classics characters is an iconic looking thing that is just unique unto itself. And Creature, I would say of any of them is the most unique looking visually. I'm trying to think who else. You wouldn't give it to, I guess, you wouldn't give it to Frankenstein, or at least the Universal. I'm just like in terms of like each other one is iconic and definitely unique in and of itself. But I would say Creature stands out in kind of a separate category of like, really like was like done some justice in terms of how like the suit was crafted and just the look of him. And I mean, he's not even really what I would call a monster. He's kind of more of an animal, but that alone like makes him like an interesting conundrum amongst the group. Yeah.
And you're right too. They took their time trying to make sure that, okay, if there were something like this, what his environment, what would he have? He'd have to have webbed hands like he does.
Yeah.
And how would he like breathe underwater and whatnot? Gillman. Gilpender.
I've heard legends of a Gillman. I, Lucas.
Well, yeah. How did they shoot this back then?
They built the water housings, and like I said, they housed the entire 35 mil rig in there, downed it, shot for 11 minutes, raised back up, unloaded the cameras, and you're talking like a good like half hour wait in between, unless they were using double rigs, which they may have. I'm not privy to that, but I'd be willing to bet that they were only using single setups. That would mean like 25 minutes wait on loading. Once they're loaded, rehoused, back down, shoot for 11 minutes, rinse and repeat. Quite literally.
I mean, this is just like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, and to think there was no James Cameron on this film.
Yeah.
So that was, I mean, from a shooting standpoint, I have to tip my cap to be able to.
That's why it stands out in a lot of ways for me. It's not even just that I do think that Creature is one of the most interesting of the characters, but the process by which they grindstone this is impressive for 54 especially. And like all of them have, they each has their own unique factors. Frankenstein, the castle model, Dracula's castle also impressive, but Dracula's lighting, Wolfman, the character creation of Wolfman was very impressive. Hair was very notoriously difficult to work with.
Yeah.
And he was covered from head to toe. Mummy, the Egyptian angle of that, the lore, the writing, all of that. Each one of these stands out in all those categories, but each has its little flair that it shines. I would say Creature, it's the underwater camera work that really makes this one shine.
Yeah. No, too. I think too, given the fact that, like I said, I forgot and I didn't realize that this was 54 when it came out. So you're in into the post-World War II world, and there's that sense of Universal wanted to kind of revive their monster genre,
which they've gone through several periods of doing.
Yeah. Most recently, of course, didn't didn't pan out too well.
Well, most recently is upcoming. The new Wolfman's coming out.
Oh, they're taking a stab at it again, are they?
Have you seen the trailer?
I have not.
It's interesting. We'll say I'm intrigued.
I didn't even know this was a thing.
So weirdly enough, yeah, like I didn't know about it until HHN. They debuted the look of the new Wolfman at HHN. I was like, that's different. I was like, that's a different way to do that. And I was like, because we saw the banner and everything up there, we missed the character experience, but I looked it up after the fact and I was like, oh, interesting. Not what I expected. It's being directed by Lee Whannell, who, going back to our Insidious episode, plays Specs, who co-wrote Saw and Insidious.
There it is. It's all connecting.
It's all connected. Circle. It's all.
That's what I was saying. Like, kind of with the theme, this influencing that, the unintended theme we've had for this Halloween season. I saw there were a lot of things I saw in this that I'm like, yeah, I can see how this influenced things like Jaws.
Yeah. Oh, like Jaws, especially like then pulling the net up with the winch made me think of the human cage from Jaws. Mm-hmm. Like that sequence, I was like, oh, I can see right where Spielberg was pulling from.
Yeah, and I mean, in the underwater camera work, I mean, there's a direct shot that's almost POV of the Gill Man as he's like, trying to get curious with Julia. Yeah, oh my gosh,
that's one way to put it.
Julia Adams. Time to get curious with Julie Adams' portrayal of Kay Lawrence, the female protagonist. And
she did a great job. I mean, that character is very iconic.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And yeah, there's just a lot in this. Like I couldn't get Anaconda out of my head too. Just them going down. Yeah,
you know what? That's another good one. Have you seen all the memes of Anaconda? Because they're pretty damn great.
Oh, God.
Like especially the one where like Jon Voight is just like eyeing up Jennifer Lopez, and it's like it's always like something like just absurd tying it to that, like or like Jon Voight being spit out by the snake. That's a whole movie for another time. That's a great crappy movie.
Yeah, I could certainly see things
Owen
like
Wilson,
that.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I could see. I'm trying to think. I could see things like Insidious in this as well. Yeah. Like the music. That blaring, that thing that just really kind of wrenches when you hear it.
Almost
like
did it.
I only did it a little bit.
The best.
I can see bits of Jurassic Park
in
it, bits of Indiana Jones.
Like the shot angles of like just showing the creature's feet, hands at certain points. It's like there was a ball started rolling with this one.
Yeah,
that was picked up in a number of periods over the years.
Yeah, interesting too. I didn't realize that this was 3D when it came out.
Yeah, this was early on in the realm of the 3D cinema.
And they shot it using, I've never heard of this, using a process called natural vision.
Yeah, it was one of the earliest 3D processes.
That's interesting to me.
I'm sure you've seen like 3D rigs before.
Only in my dreams, but yes.
So like basically one camera, like both shoot into like dialed mirrors. One shoots straight down, the other shoots straight forward, and basically you house the two together. Mm-hmm. So it's like you shoot each through an angled mirror. It kind of binds the images together, and you get that parallax shift that causes the effect.
That causes that 3D effect. Interesting. So I mean, that had to be tough. I mean, to do that, not only are we going to shoot underwater, but we're going to shoot 3D as well.
I feel like they only shot like key shots underwater in 3D.
Yeah.
Because that would have been very complicated.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this, if anything, this definitely has to get a tip of the cap for the technical side.
Oh, absolutely.
And the post-production.
And like, the makeup effects.
Yeah, this is one where I definitely have to, whether or not you like the story or not, you have to give it the effort for everything that was going on behind the sets.
For me, it's kind of like a lot of my favorite things mixed together. So it's like the 1999 Mummy with the adventure aspect.
Yeah. Absolutely. I definitely saw, that was another one. I definitely saw the Mummy, the 99 version in this as well, which of course makes sense.
It's like the adventure aspect, like it's got that Jungle Cruise atmosphere to it. Mm-hmm. It has, the creature feature aspect, not to go by the titular character, but it has that creature feature aspect like Jaws, like so many other things.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has like the humanoid threat. So it's one of the only things I can think of that manages to have like a creature-esque creature feature, but also like a human type threat.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sits in a quite unique category in terms of what it offers up to the table in terms of threats throughout the story.
Yeah. No, and I think too they knew like, okay, we got to get butts in the seats. How am I going to do this? It's a monster movie. What can we do? And of course that 3D is one way to get people.
Yeah. It's the CinemaScope. It's the 3D. Like I love the cheesy like technical marketing campaigns. Like they would always try to like sell you on this new tech process.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to like aggressively market something as being 2D.
Aggressively market something as being 2D? How do you?
Yeah.
Being
like
one?
Presented in 2D.
2D.
like really sell the fact that it's just like everything else.
Yeah. You know what? Who knows? That could work.
Yeah.
I would not be shocked if you were able to pull that off.
I'm keeping that one.
Okay.
Trademark.
Trademark. Can't use it.
Mine. Said it here first.
But so you mentioned the suit a little bit before. I didn't realize there were two actors playing the suit, one on land and one.
I think that they juggled them out for the heat.
That makes sense. Oh yeah, you had Ben Chapman.
This is kind of like 2001. It's like they did not have heat dispersion in those suits. It's like you just sat in there and boiled.
Oh my god,
hell! Like that would be absolute hell.
I want to know then. Okay, so Ben Chapman, the actor, he played the creature on land, and then Rico Browning, if I'm pronouncing his first name correctly,
believe so,
performed in the water. How the hell do you perform in that thing in the water? Like,
I think that they had a number of suits available for the land stuff, but I think that they only had a limited number for in the water.
Yeah, but still, I feel like that would be so tough to have that on you. Like, how would that affect your breathing? Because, I mean, does he... I don't see... Unless he's got, like, something in there that's helping him breathe, but...
It's possible they had an aqua lung.
You talk about me.
Hey, Aqua. All I could think of the whole time rewatching it this time around was Anchorman.
But yeah, I mean, like there was no, I mean, I remember there's no CGI going on here. So that was shot for real.
They did that for real.
They did that shit for real.
That was a real fish man that they had down there.
But I just was like, it was more of the things I'm like, I feel like there'd be so much paperwork and red tape to go through and permits if you wanted to shoot that today or something without, you know.
Could you imagine the insurance claim if they killed a
or
fish
the insurances?
Man?
Yeah. That would have been no, I can't, mind-boggling.
I just picture it like they walk into the insurance office, just like drop the actor still in fish suit on the desk, still wet. I'd like to claim this.
Well, we got a problem on our hands. Something happened, but
I broke this.
Well, something too that you had brought up about the uniqueness of the creature. I don't know if you mentioned this, but I think you did now. But it is truly a 100% original creation of Universal. Like Frankenstein,
which is honestly
Dracula,
really cool,
Wolfman. They're all based on, be it, you know, like Frankenstein based on Mary Shelley's novel.
Yeah.
Dracula or the Wolfman or the Mummy. They all have like sort of their basis on something else, either another culture or mythology or folk tales.
Which that process honestly it still is kind of being emulated, like taking something and like adapting. Like you look at Joker, for example. Joker is like a drastically different take on the Joker than the comics, than other iterations of Batman. There's like so many different things where the literary license is taken between the transition of adaptation. And it's like formed into something kind of new. Yeah. And I would say Universal Monsters are one of the first big iterations of that.
Yeah, I can see that.
So creatively, that's kind of interesting.
Well, too, I mean, you brought up Shape of Water.
Yeah, exactly.
And how you brought up Shape of Water there, and that pretty much does what you were saying about Joker. It does the same thing here with Creature of the Black Lagoon. Enough to create something new with that familiar but fresh feeling to it, which is always that sweet spot, which is always the Goldilocks zone, if you will.
It's kind of interesting because it's like a little bit of a hybrid. It's like it's a reimagining, it's a retelling, it's a repackaging. It's almost like a continuation in a lot of ways as an additional sequel. It's so many things under one roof. I love it.
Yeah, and it's definitely one of those characters. I mean, it enters that our lexicon, essentially. Like, even if you don't know the title of the movie or something, I'm sure somewhere, someplace, you've been exposed to some inspiration of the creature or like the Gill Man. in some form. Like Shape. I hate to go back to Shape of Water again, but like
it's fair. Like it's
like it's
or
like Hellboy.
Yeah, Hellboy was another one. Like,
that. Yeah,
Guillermo definitely loves Fishman. Like no question.
It is the sea who has his heart. Is that from something?
I love my monsters.
But yeah, no, I mean, like that, like Frankenstein, like Dracula, Gilman is there as well. Like, it's one of those things that has just gone beyond the movie itself.
And they've done him a number of times at HHN. Like it's pretty great to see somebody running around spooking you in like the Gilman suit in the October season. Like it's there's something just special about that event. But like the fact that they have such a cherished reverence for those monsters just in general. But like also too, Universal is bringing Dark Universe into play with Epic Universe. Epic Universe tickets just started going on sale, which means they're like definitely planning to be open next year, which the turnaround on that is wild. Like they started building that park just like not all that long ago, like comparatively. So Dark Universe is getting its whole own section of a theme park, which is wild. They have I think I mentioned this before to you, but they have a windmill restaurant being built that's going to be on fire all the time, and it's called the STAKE Steakhouse.
What? Wait a minute, it's going to be on fire the whole time?
Yeah, it's like a effect, but it's going to be on fire.
Oh, okay, it's an effect. Yeah, my dumb brain thinking, how the hell are they going to stop
Put it out?
Burning?
What are you doing?
No, I was just testing you, making sure you were listening.
What do you mean it's going to be on fire?
Wait. What do you mean? What do you mean exactly?
What do you mean? I'm thinking of a line from some. What do you mean? What do you mean the battery's dead?
What do you mean the battery's dead? I don't know how else to explain this to you.
The battery is dead. But yeah, like I do think Dark Universe is going to be very cool. I am very excited to see what they do with it because there is such universal love for the Universal horror monsters.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm curious. Let's do a little brain activity here.
I don't want
to go a little off script if you don't mind.
Shoot.
Okay. Give me, if we were, let's say you are given the keys to the kingdom and it's like, hey, we're going to redo Creature from Black Lagoon. I'm going to give you, first off, are you taking it? We'll start there.
Oh,
are you taking this opportunity?
No
Universal
question.
contacts you and
1,000% I would tackle that.
You tackle that? Okay.
I feel like that's one that's due also.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here, I'm thinking like I could see this one, and I could see this one maybe being redone, and I'm just trying to think of like what would you do different? Like obviously, like you would have the underwater stuff.
I would have it in a similar like Jaws arena. Like I would use like all of the things that it influenced flux back into it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your only thing is like you just gotta redo Creature from the Black Lagoon, and you gotta make it a hit. So it's gonna make so much money. So what are you thinking? What are you keeping? What are you cutting? What are you adding?
The trick I think would be to strike the balance between terror and sympathy.
Okay,
which I think that the original had perfectly.
So you're going to keep the King Kong kind of route undertone there.
I would broaden the scope, try and keep the balance the same.
All right, you keeping it in the Amazon?
Keeping it in the Amazon? I don't know that I would keep it as like general purpose scientists. I don't know, maybe bring it into the animal preserve type arena, or like have like a crew that has like inherent conflict. People of different sentiments, something of that avail.
Yeah,
honestly, I think this would be one that would be extremely fun to writers. I would kill to just like bounce those ideas.
Well, the question too is I'm thinking is like, because the movie does take itself seriously, even though it is
absolutely, even though it's got that semblance of ridiculousness in it.
Yeah, that classic monster movie feel. But the characters, I mean, the actors, you can tell they're all, I don't know, they're not, no one, I don't feel like anyone was phoning it in on this one. I really don't. Like, you can kind of tell. I mean, yes, the acting style, we talked about it, the dialogue, there's more of a stagecraft to the older movies than you see. And
there's a kind of a delightful simplicity to it.
Yeah. So I am curious if like there would be that urge to want to just go more of a comedic route with this, although I wouldn't want to do that. But I feel like
that's a tricky tightrope balance.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to do that though. Like, I mean, I'm not saying we have to get like philosophical with it, but I would want to adhere to more of the original.
Yeah.
And just now the question, of course, is, do you take Gilman out of his element and bring him into civilization, or do you keep it?
Oh, that's an interesting concept.
Well, I guess technically Shape of Water sort of did that.
Shape of Water kind of does do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there were also 2 other sequels to this in 55 and 56.
Oh, there were. Okay. Oh, yes. Yes.
So it is interesting that this has had, quite the enfranchisement for, something that was kind of rolled the dice as like you said, an original telling.
Mm-hmm.
So the success that this has had is impressive because it's not, a pre-established IP, to use the parlance of our times.
Well, no, yeah, if you were to do it again now, obviously it is, but yeah, it's rare that you see something.
Yeah, like speaking from like its original iteration.
Yeah, it doesn't have some sort of built-in audience already,
which seems to be all the rage these days.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Who would you cast? Who would be your K? I'm thinking if we did this, we'd have to have Kay Lawrence as the complete. I think I would do it that way. She would just be. So let's talk. What if we did this, Brian? I've got it, Brian. I've got our idea.
Pitch
you ready
me,
for
sell
this?
me.
You ready for this? Okay, it's the creature from the Black Lagoon, right? Picture it, okay? But we're gonna make Kay the main character, 100%. She's the lead. Okay, and we're gonna combine it with the slasher genre trappings. All right, she's final girl. Okay, and then we could even do it. We could make this like a mystery thing. There's something going around killing people. And we think it's the creature from the Black Lagoon, but really it's a chainsaw wielding maniac. But no, I do like that part was no. But I do kind of like the idea of taking, the cross genre test. If I take creature Black Lagoon, and I plug it into with the rules and the lore and the expectations behind a slasher genre.
That can give you a spark of ideas and send you.
I feel so because when we talked about the slasher genre, we said how the villain is bigger really than the title of what they're in. Like Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers.
What I found kind of interesting, because we're still going through that, so not to take us down full slasher
No, you're good.
path,
Go ahead.
But I did find it kind of interesting that Texas 3 Leatherface is like much more of a slasher film than the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
Like it really fits the tropes and trappings of what a slasher film is way more than the original.
Interesting. Okay.
And the second one's kind of somewhere in between the two.
Yeah. Well, this movie when it came out was in that in-between sort of bridge stage because you had that moving away from the sort of golden age standard of the classic horror movies into a more science fiction. You start to, I can start to see some of the 80s horror movies that would come out of this.
Yeah.
We talked about like Poltergeist last year, or Nightmare on Elm Street, stuff like that. I can see how this acts as kind of like a bridge between those two eras in horror cinema history.
Given that there was such a time gap too between like the last big tentpole horror classic between like Wolfman and this, there was a vast ocean of time.
Mm-hmm.
It does kind of just like in terms of like creative space, I feel like it is like just a bridge between so many of those things, like sitting in between on the timeline.
But yeah, could you also take this if you redid it? Could you take it in that psychological route?
I think you could.
Could you take it
if you look,
in
even though Invisible Man kind of was already in that psychological space, they amped it up big time for the most recent installment.
Yeah.
I would say that like the Hollow Man iteration, like the Kevin Bacon one, maybe not so much psychological as just like demented.
Yeah.
Like kind of like a thriller more so than like a deep psychological thriller.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. Can you take it and make it that, give it the Twilight Zone approach in this? I could certainly see this as like a Twilight Zone type episode.
Oh, absolutely, Sam. Like it fits that totally.
In fact, I think there is an episode that has like a creature or like a water creature. No, isn't there one? Or I'm thinking of the plane one that we talked about.
Might be.
I mean, anyway,
Big man.
You could do that. You could also, like I said, now that I'm thinking about it, you could take this in a Beetlejuice direction and make it more of a dark comedy farce. Even though I don't know if I would do that, but you could make the Gill Man, have a personality.
Given the dialogue and everything, like there is a lot to play with comedy-wise.
Yeah, like you could go full-on dark comedy with this and give it that, that Beetlejuice style and design. Essentially, like one of the main characters says, what you repeated before is like, oh, it's like another world down there.
It's another world.
It's another world.
They often treat Kay as like the vulnerable little
that's
woman.
That's where you'll be. Anyway.
They often treat Kay to like the vulnerable little woman and like a lot of mansplaining and like
yes, just, absolutely.
It's very much shows itself as being the 50s and often
it does. Yes, I will admit that fully. Like when you watch this, I'm like, okay,
from the time capsule aspect of it, it is quite funny.
Yes, pay no attention to this creepy man behind the curtain here. But yes, that is definitely there. That's why I stress that. But it's not a long movie, and it's a B horror movie.
Yeah, and like that's honestly from an editing standpoint too. There's a testament there that it is like a tightly wound machine.
Mm-hmm. I definitely love this for the technical side, what they did, how they shot it. It's solid. It's a solid movie, and of course, it's it
had like you and I both love adventure pieces. This is definitely like a science adventure movie. Exploring of the Amazon.
Is,
like there's a lot there that is endearing, and definitely you can see the influence over time, like things that we mentioned before that it definitely had an impact on. There's a lot, like even just too from an impact standpoint, like this had a vast reach even in like the 50s, and like how it grabbed a stronghold there of science fiction fans. It was definitely one of the most polished pieces of science fiction for its time in terms of competing with like The Day the Earth Stood Still and things like that. Like there wasn't a ton at that time out and around, so when something like this came out, it made a splash.
But
I didn't. God damn it! I didn't mean. Why am I?
All right. Okay. All right. Shut your face. No. Anyway. No, I was gonna say no. That's an excellent point. Like, especially too, here in the 50s, you have going into the 60s, you have like the start of the space race and this sort of fear. You've talked about it in the episode already. That fear of the unknown or the distant past, or like that sense of deep time. Like how do you think of like millions of years? It's just like you can't really. Our brains like can't comprehend it. Mm-hmm. Like how long of a time period that is. Yeah, and I think this definitely a lot of science fiction takes, especially horror science fiction takes those big astronomical what ifs and plays with them and turns them on their head. Things like this, like The Fly does.
The Fly is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Jaws 2 as well did it in the 70s.
Just the second one.
Alien, of course, going on later. There is that big sense of just not knowing what you might encounter. It takes, I would say, a movie like this and this genre, the science fiction genre in horror, takes that sense of adventure, that lure of discovery of like, what we might find, and turns it on its head, gives it that edge, that just horrible, blood, curdling feel to it. When you look at it, it's like you might not want to look and see what you find.
And you have that, like with that ending, you have that sympathy for a creature.
Yeah. As he's like, they're just kind of shooting him in the back and he doesn't quite know what's happening. And he's just kind of walks out of the cave. I admit it is a little hokey. I wouldn't be surprised. A little bit, yeah. But
goes with the territory.
Yeah, it goes with the territory here. But no, that is, you got to think, like, too, I feel like they were trying here. They weren't just trying, like I said, I don't feel like anyone's really phoning it in on this or trying to, just give me your money and shut up type deal. Even though the whole expedition, at least for the one character, the other dude, not the main scientist guy, but the one who's more in it for like, he literally has a whole monologue about it saying like, this is essentially financial. Like we can make out really well with this discovery.
Yeah, the greed. Yeah. The greed embodied character.
But it has that same, I even see like, again, I have it's that same thing you see in a lot of zombie movies. Like the big twist in zombie movies is, surprise, the real monsters are the people.
The real creature was the friends we made along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that overall the horror classics are all fantastic. This one for me kind of stands out a little bit. It's definitely one of my personal favorites. It will always be. It's the core of too many things that I love dearly in following years. So, it's one that's worth a watch. Definitely has some dated aspects to it, as you're going to get with something from the 50s. But I do all the same. I think it's definitely worth a watch. Had its 70th anniversary, something that's still making an impact 70 years later. I think it's worth.
I would say so too. Yeah, pop out the popcorn. And again, it's not a long movie, so you can certainly
only slightly longer than this episode of us talking about.
Yes. But yes, definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I just hope everybody has a great... Thanks for joining us on the horror dive over the last several weeks. I think we had a good season this time. Again. I think this is a great experiment. What did I did again?
A horror dive. No, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
God damn it. I swear I'm not even trying to do this. I like this experiment. This is something I've been into. Han, thank you for going on the ride with me for these last 2 years.
You're welcome.
Excited to keep this train going following season. Hope everybody has a happy Halloween.
Yes, and a happy New Year. Well, that's a different holiday.
Honestly, if we could just skip over Mariah Carey, that'd probably
skip
be
over. Yes,
the
go straight to the New Year's.
So I love the meme where she's like thawing out of the block of ice from the thing.
Sometimes words are not enough. You gotta just make noises.
You just gotta die inside a little bit.